Hey everybody, my name is Dan Kruger. I work at North Penn High School, which is a relatively large suburban high school about 20 miles outside of Philadelphia. At North Penn High School, I teach biology, botany, and marine science to students in grades 9 through 12. All right. Outside of work, I do have a couple hobbies. I do like gardening, in the spring, the summer. During the winter, I like to do saltwater aquarium stuff, which is great because like my hobbies and the subjects I teach are relatively aligned. Family, I'm married. Here's a picture of me and my wife Heather. Together we have 2 kids, Gavin, who is almost 4 years old, and Tristan, who's just 8 months old. All right. On the right side here, you see a picture of my classroom. All right, so the biggest challenges during the pandemic. So professionally, there was a lot of challenges that I encountered this year. I would say in the 13 years of teaching, this one has definitely been one of the most difficult. And my biggest challenge is that most of my students I only know through Google Meet. So we started the year with all virtual, and now we have hybrid. So I do get to see a few of my students in person, but still about 90% of my students are 100% virtual. So the only way I get to interact with them is through Google Meet, which was a new experience, and I'm finding it somewhat difficult to kind of build relationships with students and get them to participate like they would if they were in front of me for a live instruction. We also switched LMSs this year. So for the past couple of years, we've been using Google Classroom, and recently our school district has switched over to Canvas. So that was a pretty steep learning curve, learning how to take your assignments and upload them into Canvas and build your modules and grade assignments and things like that. All right. And then the final challenge I mentioned is that just kind of teaching science while keeping student safety in mind. So my science class was always, students pop out of the seats, doing a lot of hands-on work and doing experiments, working in groups and things like that, and all that stuff for this year seems to be off the table. So how do I give them the same experience while they're at home, and while the students that are here can work in groups and be that close to each other? So that's a little bit challenging as well. Right. So some things I learned about myself in the past year. I learned that I can be flexible and adaptable in the way I teach. So I'm doing a lot of things that I never had any intention of doing before this year. And I'm finding that even though I'm working outside of my comfort zone, I can still be effective, and my students still seem to be learning, the bulk of what I need them to know. All right. I also learned that I couldn't do this job, on my own. Right. So the only way that I'm able to get through this year is relying on support from my coworkers, kind of sharing successes and challenges with each other. Also, a lot of support from friends and family. All right, so the 3 types of mindsets. The first one, all students can learn. Absolutely agree with that. So as a teacher or as an educational leader, you have to believe that any student has the ability to learn if they're willing to put in the time and the effort to do so. All right. Teacher collaboration over isolation. All right, is another mindset that I strongly agree with. Like I said, every teacher has their own strengths and weaknesses. And when teachers are given the opportunity and time to kind of collaborate with each other, we're able to improve on our strengths and improve on our weaknesses and share our strengths and successes with each other. All right. And then happiness and optimism. I somewhat agree with this mindset. I've heard for a couple of years now that happiness is not a result of success. That success is a result of like a happy mindset. And I think that's true to a degree. However, I think there's plenty of instances where somebody can be successful and not happy. There's also plenty of instances where somebody can be happy but unsuccessful. All right. Confidence, as for the first type of disposition, yes, a good leader has to be confident. If you're not confident in your decisions, I think that people will pick up on that, and they're much less likely to follow you in that decision-making process. Be willing to take risks and be decisive. All right, it's another very important quality among leaders. All right. So in the article, it mentions paralysis by analysis, which I thought was clever, and I see this a lot. With the leaders in my school and the people I work with, where they just kind of like pour over the data, and they can't quite make the decision. They're always second guessing themselves. For me, I have no problem taking a risk, and failing and trying something else. So I feel like I am a risk taker, and I'm relatively decisive in what I do. Right? Having a good sense of humor, I don't think is as important as the other 5 dispositions. I think it's important, right, because it makes you more approachable, helps you build positive relationships, but not, essential for a good leader. There's plenty of leaders I can think of that didn't have much of a sense of humor at all. Right? Empathic, particularly assertive. This one, I think it's important to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Especially when you're asking them to do something like, try to imagine, what exactly you're asking them to do. And then finally, learner. So obviously it's important for us to be, or for leaders, to be well informed, and, this idea that we're lifelong learners, we're always trying to get the newest information, in order to make the most informed decision is a very important leadership disposition. The 3 types of practices, we have focus and prioritizing. So obviously a good leader needs to be focused. Oftentimes I see like leaders have too many ideas and they spread themselves too thin with too many initiatives. And now instead of having 1 or 2 things that you really are meticulous about and you really see through, you have all these other ideas that kind of fall through the cracks and fail. Right. As a science person, I really see the importance of examining feedback and data. I'm always curious when I see a decision being made, like what is the data, the information that somebody used to base that decision on. And then emotional intelligence. To be a leader, they obviously have to be respected. And I think we all realize that in order to get respect, you also have to be respectful yourself and give that respect, right? So that is a very, very important practice for good leaders. All right. Now for the 8 ethical leadership, 8 principles of ethical leadership. We have personal courage, right? So you got to be brave. You got to be able to stand up even to your superior. If you think there's a policy that's not in the best interest of your students, all right? You got to put public interest, in above your own personal interest. So a lot of times the best choice is not the easiest choice. A lot of times, the best choice is going to be more work for yourself, but still that is the right choice and the choice that you should go with. All right, self-control, self-discipline, and integrity, all about just kind of being a good person with good moral backgrounds. A lot of times these leaders are looked to as role models, right? So you always have to act, in a way where you want a role model to be viewed, right? Task and employee centeredness. Again, this is along the same lines as being able to walk in somebody else's shoes. So you gotta be able to give your teachers or your students realistic tasks, if you expect them to follow through with it. Right? Recognizing talent, obviously a good leader can recognize talent and, should kind of acknowledge or reward people that go above and beyond, right? Requiring high ethics from everyone. I thought this principle was tricky because, I feel like morals and ethics is kind of relative and subjective and can change, according to a person's background or towards, a person's culture. So while you might think that you're demonstrating, good moral values, somebody else might have completely different values and see things a little bit differently. Sensitivity and understanding, right? Of course, a good leader should try to be understanding and sensitive, and realize that maybe not everything applies to everybody, and try to understand everybody's unique situation. And then we have inclusiveness. All right, so a good leader is inclusive. Thinks about not just the teachers that they're working with, but the students that those teachers are dealing with, and the parents of those students, and really all the stakeholders involved in education. All right, so after looking at the mindsets and the practices and the principles, I set up this chart just as my strengths and weaknesses as an educational leader. All right. For the strength side, I said that I'm a risk taker and decisive. Right. I'm pretty good at examining feedback. I think that's the science background in me. I like to look at data and use that to kind of drive my next decision. And I'm relatively focused and I'm good at prioritizing things. All right. For things I need to work on, like my weaknesses, I'm not great at collaborating, with coworkers. A lot of times, I get stuck in my own room and, just focus on what I'm doing, and I really have no idea what the people around me are doing. All right. Recognizing talent is another one, so that whether that's recognizing great things that teachers around me are doing or great work that my students are doing. A lot of times I appreciate it, in my head, but I don't say anything out loud. And then sensitivity and understanding, just trying to get more background on where my students are coming from or where my coworkers are coming from is something that I could work on. So to improve my weaknesses, I would like to take the following steps. All right, I could set aside some time in the day to observe and collaborate with my peers. I could acknowledge the good work that my students and coworkers are doing, and try to give more positive feedback. I could also make a better effort to get to know my students and coworkers on a personal level, to understand and be sensitive to their unique situations. All right. So how all this supports the educational success? I said that an effective educational leader impacts teachers, students, and parents. And by supporting teachers and parents through providing a clear, concise vision, data-driven decisions, an educated leader can create a positive educational environment where all students have the opportunity to learn and be successful. All right. So I think all the mindsets, the principles, the ethics, go into creating a good, positive learning environment. All right. Finally, here's my slide for the standard correlation, relevancy, and reflection. So in this assignment, I was able to reflect on my own strengths and weaknesses as an educational leader, and then communicate on the qualities of leadership with my classmates. It's relevant because it's relevant to my current learning because it forced me to evaluate several different qualities of educational leaders and have a better understanding of what it takes to be an effective leader. And this assignment made me realize that as a future school leader, I must be confident, make data-driven decisions, and always act in the best interest of my students. And finally, here are my references to the 2 articles that we looked at for this assignment. All right, guys, thanks for listening. Bye.